We're fashionably delayed by 3 minutes.
Yeah, sorry guys for being a little bit late. We actually started this whole thing and then realized we're not live. Let's do this again. So warm welcome to everyone to Metaflow Graphical User Interface Release Meetup. My name is Janne Salmi and I'm here at Codemate Studio accompanied by Teemu Kemppainen. Hello Teemu, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing fine and really excited to be here and to actually go through what we've been doing for Netflix and with Outerbounds. So let's see what comes up.
Awesome. And we actually have like a really, really international audience based on the registrations for this event. Would be really nice to hear in which countries are you located. And thank you for each and every one of you by making a room in your busy schedules to attend this event. So leave a comment in YouTube chat and let us know where are you located. It would be nice to hear where the Metaflow community, how it has spread across the world. And today we have 3 presentations. Firstly, Brett Rose from Netflix will share some light about Metaflow, what is it now, and in the future. And after that, we have Teemu Kemppainen and then Ville Tuulos. So let's give a warm welcome to our guests. Hello, Brett. Good morning. You're located in Los Gatos in West Coast, correct?
Correct, yeah. Coming to you live from the Netflix main campus in Los Gatos. Really appreciate you hosting this, and I'm really excited to show everybody what our new graphic user interface looks like.
Yeah, very much looking forward to this since we have some really exciting news to share with you. So we'll give you the stage in just a bit. But Ville, also welcome straight from San Francisco. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, no, amazing. I can't believe that this event is finally happening. So we have been like waiting for this to happen for such a long time, and the amazing amount of work that has gone to this. So I hope that everybody here like will be enjoying like what we can share today as much as we have been enjoying building it, I guess.
Yeah, looking forward for it. And for those who don't know Metaflow, so just like in a couple of sentences, it's a tool that makes the life of data scientists much easier, sort of makes the gap of, entering the field much lower. So essentially democratizing data science, so making the life of machine learning engineers and people working in the field much easier. So I think you have been sort of the ambassadors for this kind of human-centric machine learning. So what do you think? Is this the embodiment of that now that we're releasing the UI for Metaflow?
I think that this is probably just the beginning. I think, of course, there's so much more, but I think like the foundation, is getting in a very good shape. So that's super exciting.
That's good to hear. So basically what we have is firstly, Brett Rose, you're going to have the stage, and everybody in the audience can send questions during the presentations, and we're going to go through those as everybody has the presentations, and then we're going to have a separate Q&A in the end. We're going to have some wider discussions around some interesting topics. So send the questions to the chat, and Brett, the stage is yours to say what are the great things we have been able to achieve now.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I'll just to quickly introduce myself. I'm Brett Rose. Been at Netflix around 3.5 years. And Metaflow was first built by Ville and company and several other folks here at Netflix about four years or so ago. And so, today is a great culmination of all that work and to present what Metaflow is and how it works, and then also give you all a look at the UI. But to start off with, I'd really like to give a really big thanks and shout out to Codemate. They've been an amazing partner in developing this. The design work was excellent. The development of all the UI features, and while it did take several iterations, working with users and working through all the needs, they've really delivered on an amazing product. So I just want to give a really big thanks out to them. And without further ado, I'll just give you a quick glance at the UI. Skipped it. Oh, I guess it kind of jumped out there. I'll just jump right into the presentation. I'm not sure why one of my slides is missing in this particular deck, but for those of you who don't know, Metaflow or Netflix provides a lot of content and streaming for TV shows and movies. Data science. Oh, there's the UI. Sorry about that. Somehow my slides got rearranged, but there's the UI. It lets us see our workflow processes and so forth, and it really improves the lives of data scientists. And I'll go through a full demo here in a minute after I walk through sort of the ins and outs of Metaflow itself. But to step back a bit, we use data science to answer a whole host of different business questions at Netflix. Things ranging from content valuation, optimal placement of our content on our distribution network, and a whole set of different sort of facets of our business are being addressed and using machine learning. But there's a pretty complicated path to production with this sort of incremental advancement. As a data scientist, their lives are really kind of dominated by these small little branches in this timeline here. So if you think about what it takes for a data scientist to be able to create a production machine learning model, in the past they would have had to learn a lot about how to use cloud workstations, how to scale vertically or horizontally. They also need access to data quickly and easily, very large volumes of data, and maybe they don't want to have to use complicated engines, but eventually they need to be able to have reliable production-ready models with good isolation, and then be able to iterate very quickly. This production readiness is also sort of a range of ideas. So some production ready models actually land in the product and help recommend titles to you. Others, production ready might mean ready for A/B testing in the product. Some other examples of the types of production ready might just be feeding into a report that is helping to inform a big hunk of Netflix's business. So this because production readiness means different things to different people, we still need to be able to support all their work along the way. And then being able to access common frameworks is critical at Netflix. You've probably heard that Netflix has this freedom and responsibility. So the data scientists and the ML practitioners don't necessarily want to be locked into one particular framework. So at Netflix, we can't really say all of our modeling has to be done in Torch or something like that. We want to give those scientists the freedom to really own the modeling aspect of their work without necessarily having to be well-versed and experts in back-end infrastructure. So they need to be able to reinvent the wheel, right? We don't really want our scientists to have to try to understand how to use deployment platforms, how to use a variety of schedulers. Some of our scientists are Spark experts, but not everyone needs to be. So we look at it like this, where there's several within the stack of technology that a scientist has to really understand. We want to try to minimize the amount of context they have to be productive. So on the left side here, this is how much a data scientist really cares about. They really want to focus on the model development and the feature engineering and the model operations to some degree. What they don't really want to have to focus on is like how to manage a data warehouse or how to access compute resources for vertical and horizontal scaling. And they want a very simple way to like make sure their job can run on some period. And so to that end, they've typically had to work through each one of those layers. So with Metaflow, we have a fast data access. So we directly read from S3. Within Metaflow, you're able to directly access data in S3, which, as this chart indicates, is tremendously faster. so that you can scale vertically. Next, you want to be able to have access to vertical and horizontal compute resources, right? So Metaflow gives a quick access to being able to run your job in AWS Batch. And then new at 2.4.1, which was recently released just a few weeks ago, is the ability to distribute your jobs, your tasks across Kubernetes clusters. You also want to be able to schedule your job. So again, Metaflow just provides a simple API layer so that you can use AWS step functions, and then coming soon, we'll be offering the ability to do scheduling through Argo. The other thing that scientists often have to deal with is keeping track of all the different model runs that they've done, all the training jobs they've executed. This is a link to an example, that a blog article that describes how they used Metaflow just out of the box to be able to have rapid iteration and review of all their model runs so that they can converge on the performance that they're looking for in their modeling. So behind the scenes, Metaflow is always capturing your data, your code, and versioning it in a way that's really intelligible and easy to access through our client API. And also architecture, the ability to sort of distinguish different project spaces, so that when you want to be able to conduct experiments against one set of models versus another, we have this project workspace, so you can compare one project to another very easily through this architecture. So a scientist doesn't necessarily have to configure all this external to their modeling environment. So right within their flow, they can express their project workspaces. Then lastly, of course, as we get towards the pointy end of modeling and machine learning applications, today we're releasing our UI. So this is a graphic user interface that lets us keep track of every task that's being executed as part of our flows in a really easy and intuitive way. Of course, we also recently released a Slack bot so that you can integrate Slack bot with Metaflow. This lets you have a very elegant interface to communicate, to really get insight into how your models are behaving and how they're running. And then there's also, this is an example blog article that talks about model operations using Metaflow, and then keeping track of the sort of, I guess, the performance of your models from a modeling standpoint using Celdon. Then there's also the part of the machine learning lifecycle that the scientist is likely more concerned with is in the feature engineering and the model development. And because of the way Metaflow manages lets the scientist manage resources and keep track of iterations, this is made a lot easier. And there's a nice example here that you can read through on what that process looks like for training models at scale. So this is where Metaflow really shines, is combining all those things into a common package without having to learn individual domain-specific languages or other types of applications. And so we also wanted to take that same principle and add it to the UI. But what Metaflow is really good at is it makes building and deploying data science workflows really easy for the data scientist. Most scientists will develop using an IDE and then execute using a CLI. And our CLI is really excellent. Let me just walk through a few examples of how you might build a flow. There's the simple one where to get started, you have input and output. And so all the flows are going to be defined similar. Basically, you build out a flow class, and in this flow class, you define each step. The steps can branch out and then join back together using some simple methods that Metaflow has baked inside. Each step in each step can actually be scaled, so you can just have these resource decorators to be able to use different compute resources as needed based off of what is happening in that task. And of course, being able to scale out vertically or horizontally is also quite straightforward. just being able to span out across a small grid for a grid search is also pretty straightforward. Each one of these, and you can also isolate resources for that fan out, and have different resources for each step along the way. This also, you can also isolate each environment using Conda. Conda, you can pin different versions of packages for the execution of a task. This also really makes production jobs a lot more reliable. So you don't have to. The scientist now is empowered to really manage dependencies for their flows. And of course, because we're tracking each version of every flow, we can always go back and use our client API to pull IDs and tags, and of course, any artifact that's been created by a task along the way. Then when it comes time to deploy your model, it's pretty straightforward. You run Python flow deploy, and it'll be deployed to batch. You can also interrogate everything using our client API in a notebook. And this is one way that in the past, this is one of the primary ways a scientist would monitor their jobs, is using a notebook. And that's still something that's very valuable for interrogating data artifacts that are part of your flow. And of course, internal to Netflix, we have the ability to deploy a model to our hosting platform so that you can have a RESTful endpoint that lets other applications use your model for scoring. Now that was a lot I walked through, and Metaflow is an amazing platform for data science, and I'd encourage you to download it and install it and run through the tutorials that come with it. They make it a lot clearer how every step along the way works. But to kind of illustrate this a little bit further, let me show you a quick demo. This is a video that I made earlier. And basically, what's going on here is this is the UI. What I'll walk through is this very typical sort of machine learning student example of house pricing calculator. This is the basic DAG view in the UI. And as you can see, when I rest the mouse over the little information spots, I get some of the developer comments. This is a very straightforward one. It does branch out for doing the training. It fans out, does a search, and again, the code is pretty straightforward. It's just using some off-the-shelf scikit-learn gradient boosted regression tree. So let me go to the main home screen here and just leave it, and then I'll switch to my command line interface here and just give you a quick example of what the command line interface looks like when you want to look at the steps in the flow. I just used our show command, and this is typically what a scientist would look at to verify that their steps are all squared away before they go ahead and run the job. And then we just simply swap out show for run, and it kicks off the job. So what this is doing is executing some of the steps locally, and then it's going to push some of the steps. It's going to fan out the training steps to Netflix's Titus infrastructure, which is our distributed microservice architecture. And this is typically what a scientist would view, but now they can use the UI. So there's my new job. It's already started. You can see that the color is slightly different than the completed jobs. There's this little lever that lets me expand it and see the current state of the DAG as it's being processed. And what I really like about this is the ability to jump right into a specific task of interest and get a quick view of the standard out and standard error. There's some other kind of niceties there where we can group all of the tasks by step, so we have a better sense of how things are organized and how things are running. Notice at the bottom left there, some of the tasks within that training step are still sort of this orange color. And that's because they're initiated but not started. Once they start, they turn that sort of pale green. And of course, I can click on any one of those and get, again, some view of the logs. At Netflix, we have this internal plugin that we use that lets us get a link to the Titus container that's running that particular task. Also at Netflix, we're polling the logs every 20 seconds. So in near real time, we'll be able to continue to stream the logs into the graphic user interface. And some of these features will also be available in the open source. The plugins will be specific to the implementation. Now, this job runs about 5 minutes, so I won't keep you here for that long to watch the job running. But just to give you a sense of what the UI looks like and what the data science experience might be, going from the IDE to the command line and then to the graphic user interface to watch the operations of their job. And just to look at a completed job, you can always go and review those and look at the output at any time. Once in the past, you can go and look at historical runs of your model and see what their parameters were like. Now, if you would like to try it yourself, Outerbounds has really graciously helped out by providing a demo public site with a few sample flow runs, so you can click through and tinker with it. But also, if you want to learn more, you can, of course, go to our documentation site. And then we've also added some admin docs, so you can learn how to deploy the infrastructure, deploy it on your infrastructure. This Gitter is out of date. That should be changed, but we have a Slack channel that we'll be linking later in the chat windows and also on the YouTube comments. And then you'll also be able to get access to the sandbox. And with that, I'm open for questions.
Great. So send some more questions to the chat. Thank you very much, Brett, for this demo and presentation. We have a couple of questions in the chat, but I'd like to open with a question of my own. Is that what are you especially proud of in this UI release and or the UI development project?
Well, a couple of things. I think the thing I don't want to say that I'm proud of, but I think it was a really great working experience with Codemate. The design process was really very professional, and the delivery was really on point, I think. But I think one of the main things is I think they've really created a elegant user interface with a lot of empathy for the scientists on on the features they need and the sort of performance and responsiveness that a scientist needs when they're under pressure to really iterate fast and reliably on their modeling. And I think this will really help our scientists, and then by extension help Netflix. So I think I'm really proud of the fact that it's a very performant and elegant user experience.
Thank you. That's good to hear. Just for those sending the questions, so Brett is currently managing the Metaflow project at Netflix. So from this kind of perspective, he has maybe the best overall view on what's happening in the development at the moment. But then let's bring up one question here from Obi-Wan Kenobi, who asks, when is the model hosting feature getting open sourced?
That's a great question. I don't know if Ville can help out with that. It's one of the features that is really also in high request. Ville, do you have any signal on that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I needed to unmute myself. Yeah, no, that's a great question. Well, I mean, for starters, there is the Seldon blog post that Brett mentioned as well that shows how you can deploy models trained with Metaflow on Seldon, which is an open source tool today, so you don't have to wait for anything. by the way, I can use this opportunity to mention that there's also going to be another workshop about that very topic in less than a month at the Toronto Machine Learning Summit that we will be organizing together with Seldon. So if you are interested in model hosting and model deployments as microservices, definitely join that event. But now the overall question of how to deploy models as microservices, that's of course a big one. And as Brett mentioned, there is the internal system that's quite tied to the Netflix's internal infrastructure. So I don't know if that piece is that useful outside. And definitely, we would overall love to hear from you. What are your specific requirements? We are always on the lookout for new solutions. We have been thinking SageMaker hosting as another alternative. Seldon is one, or maybe they could be others depending on what people need. So definitely come to our Slack and we can chat more.
Yeah.
And we will add the links to Outerbounds Slack as well as the other resources in the description. So after this stream, we're going to edit the description. And during this live stream, they will be added in the end of the presentations to the chat. And let's take the next question from Cyril. Is it possible to include private PIP packages in the environment of a task? It's a pretty specific question.
Yes.
I guess, yeah. I guess Brett, well, I know that Netflix operates your own internal Docker image that of course includes many private PIP packages. So I guess the answer is resounding yes in that sense. But there isn't any magic support. I guess you can bake the packages in the Docker images that you use. that might be the easiest approach. Or then you can use the usual pip mechanisms to use your private package artifactories. But there isn't anything special that Metaflow does for you.
All right. Anything to add for this? All right, let's just I have Ryan asked if this is already available right now. So is it already launched? I think it was due today.
Yes, I think so. I think the demo site is available. Is that right? And then also the repo is open. And we'll provide direct links later on in the chat.
Yeah, that was a really big news for us, and we're very excited about, because the original plan for this particular event was that this would be a pre-release meetup, and we would be releasing it sometime in the future. But now the team has been working really hard to be able to publish it today for you guys. Let's take one more question from this chat. So Valet asks, can we trigger Metaflow workflows using the UI?
Not yet. Right now, it's really just for operational view of a flow, of a run, and from there you can drill in and look at the log, the Metaflow logs that are reported in standard out and standard error, and also get to the UIs for batch. But we haven't deployed, or we haven't really looked at how to initiate a run from the UI or do we may look to maybe restart eventually. I think those are definitely on the roadmap.
All right, thanks for the questions this far. So our next presenter will be Teemu. But sorry. So Teemu, could you a little bit tell what are you going to speak us about? And thank you, Brett. We'll catch up with you in the later part in the QA.
Excellent. There we go. I can see myself. Yeah. So hi, I'm Teemu, and and of course, first of all, thanks Brett, thanks Netflix, thanks Outerbounds and Ville and everyone who's been involved in this project and we've been able to work with. This has been quite of a journey, let's put it like that. But I'm here to discuss more about our design process and how we created the Metaflow graphical user interface and how it came to be what it is today. So without further ado, let's dive in. Quickly, a glance of what we're going to go through. This is not going to be long, so that's good. I'll be brief with this because, yeah, it's a tool. It's a really nifty, purpose-built tool to make your life easier if you're a data scientist in working this kind of an environment. So as you can see from the contents, first we have some high-level requirements and the high-level architecture. And then we straight away dive deep into the views and functionalities that the UI actually currently provides. As a bit of a disclaimer, there are some features here and there that are up and coming. So this is kind of also a teaser for the future, but you'll get them eventually at some point. So when we look at the requirements, these are actually the 4 lines that we got as a company from Netflix like 1.5 years ago. And these if you look at them, they're rather simplistic. Make a UI that's snappy, real time, intuitive, and informative. Those are like really high level things that if you want to actually follow those principles, you have to really keep a keen eye on what you're doing and how you're doing it. And we really took this to heart as a team. We really wanted to ensure that everything that we do would actually serve the user and make their life easier, like keeping it snappy. Because we're crunching probably millions of lines in the worst case scenarios. How we were able to actually tackle that the UI will be highly functional all the time. It will feel good to use and it won't be a sluggish fest of slowness. Let's put it like that. Yeah. Had another word for it, but it wasn't it wasn't that appropriate. So let's move forward. Make it real time. So we're using WebSockets to ensure that everything comes to the user immediately when it happens. Make it intuitive. There's no hidden features or anything that the user would actually have to try to guess what it will do. And it needs to be informative because the tool is used for debugging. It's used for going through things that might be problematic or that might not function as they were intended. So it needs to provide you all the details that you need immediately and easily. Yeah, sounds good. Then we can look at the high-level architecture. And basically, as a Codemate, as a company, we focused on the right side of this high-level architecture. So basically, we created a Metaflow UI service that actually does all the communication with metadata, with Metaflow, and then gathers everything into the stream for the WebSocket to be sent to the load balancer and for the web app to actually display for the user. And as a bit of a teaser for the future, this is something that Ville will explain further on a bit more. We're also introducing plugins, and this was actually in Brett's presentation, the Titus link thing. But the plugins is a powerful feature that will enable developers to create their own plugins that they can easily include anywhere in the UI. We've pre-selected the places where they can be placed, but we've ensured that the places are, well, you can do pretty much anything with them. You can even build custom views that completely are something that we haven't figured out, and it's there to make your life more easier and to serve your needs. Okay, here, as you can see, like I mentioned earlier, this is a tool. And because it's a tool, it doesn't have anything that is not needed. There's no bloat, there's no additional hidden nice views or anything. There's only the necessary things to do what you're here to do. And without further ado, let's dive into the home view. As you can see, this is the main view, and basically this is the place where you can see all the stuff that is running in your system within the Metaflow, and you can see this updating in real time. And yeah, this is the place where you want to be if you want to know what's going on. And basically here we provide you the filtering tools to actually even customize this further on to actually get only the data that you want to see. Then we have simple navigations, and yeah, actually we can actually straight away go into the navigation. So this is something that we're quite proud of, and this was actually, there was a lot back and forth with this one when we created this breadcrumb navigation system. And basically this enables the user to jump any place or into any view within our UI. And basically you can easily share those views to another person by just simply copy and pasting the breadcrumb from the input. And you can also just send the URL. Yeah, it's that simple. We've ensured that this functions like a dream type of a thing. Then we have the quick links that actually provide you with the time zone selector. It's crucial for someone running separate tasks or testing out things that might require different time zones and etc. And there we have the link to notifications, and then some external links to documentation and help, and also some application and service versions when you're debugging and trying to find a possible problem within our UI. Okay. Then we look at actually the runs, the home views filters, and these are these are there to help you to find what you're looking for, or to see only the things that you need to see or want to see. There's one default thing that we had to add because we wanted to ensure that the UI is really snappy in the longer run, due to the fact that because you can have millions of lines here. And basically, because we've enabled this so that you can see all the history within your system if you want to. But you can guess, if you have millions of lines that you want to go through, yeah, it's gonna take some time. But we looked into this, and as a default setting, having the last 30 days is a good medium. You basically have everything that you need on a daily basis work. For that, we provide you with custom presets. That you can have a custom preset for the time frame. So basically, if you want to do the million lines, you can do it. It's your choice. And then we have some custom presets to make it easier. And then in here, in the last section, we have an example how you can use the filters to actually filter out the view. And basically, every single filter input has an autocomplete that actually looks through what is available and gives you some hints and ideas what you might want to be searching for, which is really nifty. It's kind of like even as a first time user, you immediately get kind of a glimpse that, okay, these are the things that are there in here. Yeah, let's try them. Okay, then we look a bit more into the runs list, and this is a thing that, because it's a real-time list that keeps updating in real time, and it can be really rapid if there's a lot of things going on. We've implemented a feature that basically, when you hover over a list item, we freeze the list item in its place. So basically, the list can keep updating beneath it, but you still have the item that you want to observe in your grasp. And basically, from there, you have the toggle on the right side, which enables you to see the current run, the hover list items or the runs parameters and timeline. And basically, this is to actually give the users the easy way to find even more detail in a view that is already packed with detail. So yeah. Then this is the run list grouping. So basically, we provide grouping features. I think this is up and coming. So this might not be there yet, but it should be there quite soon. So basically, as a user, you can group your runs by flow or by user. And this is just to make sure that you can have a nice grouping that shows the 6 latest runs within that group. Of course, from there, you can deep dive and get all the runs within that group visible. And we go forward. Okay, now we're back in the navigation map, and then we look into notifications. Okay, here we go. Notifications, this is basically a simple tool that came up in a certain spot when we were actually developing the UI. And we realized that there needs to be a way for the system administrators or maintenance groups to actually inform the users that, okay, there's now a maintenance, the system is down for, let's say, 1 hour or 1 day or something, or to actually prepare the users that there might be something up and coming. So take care what you're doing, save it up, or ensure that you're not doing your most crucial runs in the middle of maintenance. So as you can see, it's a history view where you actually have the message and then external or internal linkage, but usually external. And then there's a simple example of a notification that can pop up anywhere in the UI when it's necessary. Okay, and now we deep dive into the run details, which is kind of like the juicier bit, because in here we actually come to the run details timeline view, this is the default view where you actually go as a user when you click on and run on the listing view. And in here, we had a lot back and forth with Savin from Netflix and Outerbounds, how we construct this, how we ensure that we only show the data that's crucial to the end user. And basically, this is the stuff that we figured out as a team and as between two companies. This is the final solution that we found out that is best. That we have this separate header that highlights all the crucial things related to your run. What's going on? What is it IDs? Who's creating it? Which project and branches it's related, etc. And beneath that, you have this separate detail section that then includes every so to speak, nice to have things. So under there, you can find the tags, system tags, parameters, and etc. Then we have the tab navigation for DAG, timeline, and task details. So basically, every single thing that Brett showed before lives under these 3 tabs. Then we have the controls for our timeline view. So we have artifact key search. So basically, if you know that you've created specific steps with specific artifacts, you can actually find those by using this. And then we have a mode selector, which has a few different modes that you can actually like quick set up your view to support what you're doing. And there's a really nifty custom feature that we built into this that we are quite proud of it actually, because basically it stores what you've set up. So basically you can have a custom view that you can switch between any of the regular regular modes within this view and go back to your custom one to really deep dive in what you're looking for. Then we have order by and status filter, and then grouping, and then zooming controls for the timeline view. And then we have the actual timeline view. Yeah, unfortunately, I only have a still image, but you already saw how it functions in Brett's presentation. So yeah, without further ado, let's go forward and let's look at the DAG view, which is a nice graphical presentation of your run that's being run. And it really simplistically visualizes the stuff that you're running. It makes it look good. Yeah, this is pretty much the only place where we actually want to make things look good, but I like it. And as Brett mentioned before, we've included the developer comments here to actually provide the view even more value. And basically, you can find these things elsewhere, but this is kind of like if you want to get them quickly and get a good idea of the overall view and what's going on. Then we go into the task details. And basically, this follows pretty much the same structure as run details. Well, obviously, because it's really it's part of a run. So in here we have a tab navigation for each attempt of a task. So basically, in some scenarios, there might be failures that are then retried and retried. I don't remember the threshold when we actually just go like, okay, this has failed. Let's forget about it. But there might be multiple attempts, and they might have different things happening within them. We have a task detail header, and then we have a separate task detail like toggleable area like we had with the run details, where we have included stuff like the metadata table, which has relevant data to the single task. Then we have the developer comments and the download link for a specific task if you so see that you need it. Then obviously we have the standard out and standard error. And then we have this artifacts table. I also think this is something that's up and coming, but it's coming at some point. So basically, this provides you a possibility to actually download the R and Python codes directly into your own computer and check them out if you really need to. Okay, a lot of talk. And here's kind of like the good bit, the juicy bit, where we come to the like, what does it actually do? What does all of this enable? What's the good stuff, so to speak? So kind of the too long didn't read came here and just wanted to see this. What we've done with the Metaflow graphical user interface and with all the work going back and forth with the team, with the client, and ensuring that every single nook and cranny is turned over inside out and looked that it's perfect. This means that this actually improves the data scientist's quality of work, and it reduces their worries of software architecture. So basically, even on this level, it makes their work a lot more easier on a daily basis. When the daily work is easier, that actually means they work faster. They can make more iterations on the models and make them even more accurate. And when the models are accurate, the predictions are better. And when, in this case, Netflix gets more better predictions and more accurate models, that actually means that we get better shows and programming on Netflix, which is awesome. Like, this is really good stuff. Yeah, but yeah, I got all excited because I'm excited about this. This has really been a wonderful journey to see all of this for the past 16 months. And we're finally here. So thanks, everybody. Woo.
Thanks, Teemu. That was quite a presentation. You have been working with this project for a while, and what was your background? Were you familiar with data science or this line of work before starting to design this UI?
To be honest, I had some idea what it means, but yeah, my main thing is I've been a front-end developer for years and a designer for the past 5 or 6 years. So this was something that was really interesting because realizing the fact that when you're deep diving into data science, you're always going through huge amounts of data. How you visualize that, how you ensure that the usability and the UI actually serves a purpose and it actually makes your life as a data scientist better. It's a really interesting topic because I had never looked into it that much. Yeah.
We have a question from the audience that how did you involve data scientists' wishes in the design? So how did that process go?
Oh, excellent question. Thanks. In the beginning, basically all of the wishes and requirements came from Netflix's data scientists. So basically, Netflix has been gathering a lot of data and feedback from their data science teams. What do they want? What do they need? And even on when we got further into the developing our environment, our Metaflow UI, we always had an ongoing feedback loop to the data scientist at Netflix and ensuring that we were really asking, is this good for you? Do you really see that this actually serves a purpose? Does this actually answer a question? Will it help you? Type of a thing. And at some point, it took some time and trouble, but Netflix's data science teams and testing teams, they really came through. They really gave out us a lot of good stuff that ended up changing things and for the better, which is amazing.
Yeah, and I have to say that it's impressive that Netflix is pushing this open source and letting companies around the world use this amazing tool for free and take it even further. And we have some good feedback also in this chat from the audience. Cyril likes what he's seeing. So thank you a lot, Teemu. Let's get back to the more questions later on in the meeting, but let's now welcome to the stream Ville. So I'm going to give you this stage very soon, but can you give us a little bit comments on what you have seen this far during this meetup? Any comments on those earlier presentations?
Yeah, it's one of those things like when you have been really heads down focusing on something for such a long time and you kind of lose perspective. And now, like actually watching the presentations and like taking almost an outsider point of view, I mean, it looks amazingly impressive. And but at the end of the day, I think what really is worth emphasizing here is that it is a productivity tool, and of course, like all of us have had a lot of fun building it, and it has been really an interesting kind of a long process. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things that like in success kind of should fade in the background. And I guess all of us like share the feeling that like if we have managed to do our job well, I mean, of course, hopefully data scientists feel that, yeah, I mean, it's a UI, and it's maybe the one UI that doesn't ever give me trouble. And in that sense, I mean, it shouldn't take the kind of the front stage. It kind of should take a backstage. And I think that's, of course, the kind of really the kind of a sign of good design. So I know that like today, of course, is the day like kind of when the GUI is being released. It's a big thing. But I mean, hopefully, like it just like it becomes one of those indispensable tools of your day-to-day lives.
Yeah, you've been involved with Metaflow for quite a while, actually, from the beginning while working at Netflix. Now that you are co-founded Outerbounds and are helping the community. So what is your life, the work life now currently about, the day-to-day business that you do?
Yeah, well, I kind of wish that it wouldn't be that different from like what we did at Netflix, in a sense, like what Teemu was mentioning already, that like we got to work with many data scientists. Now, of course, like we get to work with even more data scientists at different companies across different industries. So which is really interesting. So of course, like a Netflix, and like we all of us like really enjoy and like rely on Netflix on our entertainment. But I mean, then like what's super fascinating is that there are so many other companies in the world like that keep our society running, and like kind of many of them, increasingly many of them actually are using machine learning and like are struggling with the same problems. So being able to help like everybody out there in addition to Netflix is of course super fun.
Good to hear. So I give you the stage now. Please let us know what are you going to talk about, and I'll share the screen for you.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Ville.
Yeah, thank you. No, and I thank you, Teemu, for giving the good overview of all the different views. And like what I wanted to do here is actually just highlight some very practical user stories that, okay, how do you actually use all these different views and like all the different features of the UI that Teemu was just talking about. And like the very first question, and this was really like one of the motivating reasons for building the UI in the first place, was that, of course, as many of you know, Metaflow since the beginning has been a CLI-based tool. So you run things on the command line. And while the command line continues to be maybe the main interface for interacting with Metaflow, there are like some questions like where command line really can't give the answers easily. And like one of those is this overall question of discoverability and understanding holistically what is happening. So let me give you an example here. So now imagine that like you have an existing flow, existing run, like in this case, nested for each run. I mean, flow, what you can do is that, well, you can actually see a visualization of the flow, like what Teemu was showing already. So this is a small feature. And like, you know that if you have used Metaflow before, the flow here reflects exactly the code that you have written. Now, another really interesting use case is this question that comes up often, that you have been running something and the run takes a long time. Like in this case, you can see that it took 6 minutes to run something, but you don't have any idea why it took so long. Now, using the UI really easily, you can look at the individual tasks and you can see that, well, I mean, many of the tasks were actually like quite fast, but there was this one outlier, and maybe there was something quite special about this. Now, of course, I mean, this is just a dummy example, but imagine that if this was an actual modeling run, it could be that, let's say you train models for different countries of the world, and like one country has way more data than others, and that's why it ends up being the outlier. And this far, let's say you have that like 200 way for each, like building those models, and it just takes a long time, and you really can't easily say why and like kind of what's even the distribution of execution times. That is exactly the type of the question that you can now easily answer with the UI. And as you saw, like in that timeline visualization, a big thing about the timeline and why it is such a important component. And on the one hand, like it really helps you to see like what is going on, like while you are executing the run. But then like once something has finished, I mean, the fact that you have all those controls and like you can kind of sort those tasks in different order, you can see like what took the longest time, like where are maybe failures and so forth. That makes it actually a surprisingly powerful visualization of the overall behavior of the whole run. So overall, like kind of the question that like what is happening in my runs was one of the main motivations for the UI in the first place. Then another big one is that I'm sure that like if you have used Metaflow in the past, like you know that occasionally things fail, maybe not, hopefully not because of Metaflow, but I mean because of all kinds of issues with the underlying infrastructure or like with the code that you wrote by yourself. And how that manifests itself is that, let's say in this case, we can only look at the ones that failed. So let's say here there's an example flow and it has the red mark, so you know that it failed. And now you can only see the tasks that failed. You can see that there's the one that failed. And now you can just navigate to the task view, and like you can see the stack trace, you can see the exact exception. Now, if you have used Metaflow in the past, you know that stack trace is available in the console as well, but especially when you have something that's really producing a lot of output, it's hard to see. And in this case, you see that there are actually multiple attempts. And so it was so that we were using the add retry decorator, and the last one actually succeeded. But like you may be interested, okay, why did it fail before? And in this case, like we just generated this exception. It could be, let's say, your database failed intermittently, and like you had 2 failed attempts, and then the last one failed. And this way, now you can actually see like what was the behavior. And this might be one of those cases again, like when the run took an unexpectedly long time, and like in the end you want to understand like how the time was spent, and now you are able to see even those like failed attempts and see what's going on. Again, this is of course not new information in a sense that like you are able to access these things using the Metaflow client API, let's say in a notebook as well. But of course, for basic monitoring tasks like this, it's just like way easier to click around in the UI. Another big one for us is that one thing why I always like to emphasize that this is like what we are releasing today is a graphical user interface, and really emphasizing the G there is that of course the CLI is a user interface as well, and like the CLI continues to be the kind of one of the key user interfaces in addition to the Python code itself, which is user interface of sorts as well. So, and the idea is that all these different user interface modalities are supposed to work together. So the intention is not to replace the CLI with this graphical user interface or vice versa, but see how they can actually like work kind of so that they complement each other. And like, here's an example. So now imagine that you are running this Metaflow, and like, let's say that there's some output that you are interested in. And this is really the cool feature that Teemu was mentioning as well, that now you can just take the path spec, like kind of the ID to the task, and using this navigation bar, you can say that, okay, this is my flow, and I can take now the exact thing, like the exact path spec from the output, and like get exactly to the task that was executed. And now you can look at the metadata, you can look at the logs here in the UI. And this is just an example of that interaction between like your command line execution and the UI, highlighting like how they are supposed to really work together and not to replace one another. And that actually like is really, if I show this like a next example, which also relates to this question of discoverability, that oftentimes I get asked that like, how does Metaflow think about experiment tracking? And you know, the experiment tracking is an interesting question that like, what is experiment tracking overall? Of course, like when you just look at the phrase, well, I mean, it means that like we want to keep track of all the things, like all the runs, all the executions we do. It also much relates to versioning, the fact that we are able to kind of store all the results, keep them isolated, keep them persisted, and so forth. And now the kind of the hypothesis that we have is that with a tool like Metaflow, and especially now with the UI, there should be kind of like you should have all the ingredients for like having a full-fledged experiment tracking solution. So if you think about just the runs view, although it doesn't seem much by itself, but I mean, like if you look at the basics first, I mean, you can see all the runs by different users. So you can group by user, like you can see what they have done. Another big one is that if you use the add project decorator, you can like see all flows related to a single project. And let's say now this is super cool feature that like if you use the branch feature, let's say to have like a different branches of even your production pipelines, let's say for A/B experimentation purposes, you can see that. Another really important feature is tagging, like shown here. So you have all these different tags, and you can filter the views based on the tags. And now the tags is something that like you can define by yourself. You can decide like how you want to use that feature, and like you can imagine that now for your experiments, like soon we will be releasing the feature that like you can tag runs afterwards. So like once you have identified that some model performs really well, you can just tag it as the kind of the promising model or something like that. And again, I mean, using the runs view, you can just like focus on the stuff that you are interested in. Now, one important thing about this is that all these views, all the different views are actually like persisted in the URL. So now you can kind of just bookmark or like share or have a short link to a particular view. And let's say if you have a team focusing on a particular project, or like you have a team and like you have some kind of a policy how you use tags, you can have a view that only highlights the work that they are doing. And in that sense, this gives you a holistic view of everything that is happening like across all people that are sharing a metadata service. Now, I know that some companies out there are really concerned about about data governance and also security policies, and then of course, like not in all contexts you are able to share everything. And now if you want to, let's say, have some kind of a delineation of data so that not everybody can see everything, I mean, you can accomplish that by having separate metadata services and then like separate UI deployments. So there's no access control included in the UI as of today. But the basic idea is that like whatever is available in the metadata service, you can filter and view using this branch view. Now, a big part of the value prop of Metaflows since the beginning has been this idea of support. And like this is, of course, the support that we are now providing like through our Slack channel. Of course, Netflix like provides support like through their own Slack channels. And I know that many companies using Metaflow have their own engineering teams, their own support teams. And for this, like one feature that we absolutely wanted to have since the very beginning is this idea that you can easily share these views. So here's an example. So let's go back to that one example where the task took a long time to execute. So now again, I mean, you can easily find the one that is the outlier case here. You can just click the task and okay, so we identify that this is somehow like now problematic. So we can just copy paste the URL. We can go to Slack. And we can just like share this like now hypothetically on our support channel. And if this happened like at your company and you had a shared UI, like you can just like say that, okay, there's something odd going on. Can somebody else take a look? You post the link. And now whoever clicks the link gets exactly the same view. And this is, again, I mean, like kind of a small and like obvious looking feature. But in so many UIs, the problem is that you can't get the permalink to the exact thing that you are seeing. And this is, again, I mean, a small detail that we felt really strongly about, that like whatever I'm seeing as a data scientist, I want to be able to share that exact view, like let's say with my support team or with my colleagues, so that they can take a look as well. So these are like some of the key user stories that like we wanted to support with the UI today. As you can see, it doesn't cover all cases. I'm sure that like many of you are now thinking that, okay, can it do X, Y, and Z? And these are the cases we wanted to support out of the box. Now, the exciting thing that both Brett and Teemu already hinted at is the idea that the UI is extensible. And of course, as you know, Metaflow by design is kind of in a way, kind of like a foundation, really a foundational platform in a sense that it allows you to create your own extensions on top of it. That is very much by design. So we are not trying to solve like every problem in the world. I mean, rather kind of provide the solid foundation that everybody needs. And then like in many cases at many companies, I mean, it's quite likely that you will want to have your own company specific secret sources and extensions on top of that like basic foundation that we provide. And like, if you think like, what does this enable overall, is that the way how we are thinking about this is that like you continue using the CLI for doing the executions for actually interacting with Metaflow. Now you can use the new GUI to inspect and monitor what's going on, but also you can use it as a bit of a portal to actually get to other systems and dig deeper. And as Brett mentioned, like for instance, Netflix has this link that leads them to their internal compute platform, so they can see details what's going on there. But you can imagine that now you could have links to notebooks. This integrates to model monitoring, AWS console, and so forth. And these are the type of extensions that we have been envisioning. And just to share you some ideas, definitely like one question that's has been on our mind and like maybe is in the minds of many of you is this idea that, okay, so how does this relate to model monitoring and all these different amazing tools that are out there for doing model visualization and like understanding the model performance. And as you may know, for instance, weights and biases comes with native Metaflow integration today. The idea is that we can make this link two-way, so that like we either link to the weights and biases dashboard or even embed the weights and biases charts directly in the UI. Notebooks is another one that has been, of course, like always a key component at Netflix and elsewhere. And like we can have like, let's say, a functionality where every task produces a notebook of sorts, and then like you can link to that notebook so you can see the results, let's say some kind of a model visualization right there in the task view. And let's say now you want to build more interactive dashboards. There are, of course, like tools like Streamlit, Plotly Dash, and so forth. Again, the same deal. Like we can directly link to these tools like from the right task. So directly, let's say from your model training task, you can go to some interactive UI that allows you to play with the model. Well, that's on the model monitoring front. Another feature that is super exciting that's actually coming soon is that we have been working with people at Coveo Labs on this new feature called @card that allows you to build reports directly in your Metaflow code. There will be more information about this coming soon, but the idea is that then like this also natively inside Metaflow itself without any third-party tools allows you to kind of enrich the task view of the GUI by having custom visualization, custom information produced by Metaflow tasks. More about that later. This is just a teaser here. Already someone asked about the model deployment, and now, again, I mean, there are many different ways how you can deploy your models, but the overall pattern that like we very much like and support is the one like where you rely on Metaflow to train your model, you get all the versioning benefits, you get the artifacts and so forth. And once the model is trained, you then call some API to deploy this model to your hosting or model serving platform. And usually what happens is that then model serving platform gives you some kind of a deployment ID or some kind of an identifier how you can like find the deployment, let's say maybe on some other model monitoring or like model serving UI. And again, I mean, like we can make this connection like directly in the UI so you can jump. Let's say you train a model, then the next step is to deploy the model. In the model deployment task, you have a link to the kind of to your serving system, and you can see like what's going on like right on that side. And this is, of course, super handy for things like A/B experiments. Now you can imagine combining this with the ad project where you have those like a different branches running and like a different branches like make different deployments. And now you want to go exactly to the right place, let's say on your serving platform to see like how the A/B experiment is doing. Then lastly, this is more like for engineering-minded people. Like one question that like we get often, and like it's actually quite important, is the question of profiling. You want to understand like how much CPU is being used, how much memory is being used, and like maybe some other underlying details, even like GPU usage or whatnot. And as you know, Metaflow is somewhat agnostic to the underlying compute platform. We integrate with many different systems, AWS Patch, now with Kubernetes. But like regardless of what compute platform you use, you can send these profiling metrics to different systems like Datadog. And again, I mean, you can imagine that like if you happen to be a Datadog customer and like you are sending this information already to Datadog about how different containers are doing, like we can include the link directly to Datadog so you can see that, okay, how did this one particular pod in your Kubernetes cluster or like kind of a whatever EC2 instance did, and like how much CPU and memory they consumed. So again, I mean, this just highlights the fact that the intention isn't necessarily that this UI like somehow tries to subsume like all different functionality. It wouldn't be reasonable, but I mean, rather so that like we can use this as a portal to then like dig deeper and like jump to different views for more information. Now, all these are like a bit forward-looking statements in the sense that this is just the beginning. Obviously, we are releasing the UI today, and like we are super curious to hear like which one of these plugins like you would be most excited about, and like let's say if your company has your own needs and like maybe internal UIs, how you can make that happen. So definitely join the Slack, and like we can chat more. Like and this is definitely like a very early days, and we are still thinking like what's the best way even to think about this. So all feedback is very welcome. Now, I just want to quickly mention a few words about like what does the deployment look like, since assuming that like hopefully at least some of you are like really eager to now get to use this at home. So the basic idea is that if you have been running a centralized metadata service for Metaflow this far, I mean, nothing changes there. So you have a container that runs the metadata service, and now let's say you have the RDS instance that has the backing database. Now, one of the absolute key requirements for the whole graphical user interface project was this idea that under no circumstances this GUI should have any adverse effects on Metaflow runs. So of course, like the last thing you want is that you are using the GUI or somebody is like running some like a crazy filtering operation and then somehow that crashes some production flow. So of course that shouldn't be possible, but we really wanted to have a strong isolation between these different concerns. And that's why now the recommendation is that you can run the UI service as a separate container. So it's totally isolated from the metadata service that tasks interact with. But now the thing is that they still use the same database. And this is really useful because then you get those real-time updates. We are using the Postgres notify mechanism to make sure that like you get those updates in real time in the UI. Now, like while this setup provides really like kind of really good guarantees about kind of there no being adverse effects on runs, if you want to be super paranoid, if you are like running super sensitive workloads on Metaflow like Netflix does, for instance, it might be sensible that instead of just having a single database, you can have a logical replica so that like all the changes in your main database are then are reflected automatically on some kind of a replica database, and then like the UI service connects to the replica. And in this case, there's no direct connection between anything that like records the metadata and then the UI itself. And in this case, it should be practically impossible like for the UI to have any effect on any Metaflow runs. So this is another deployment pattern. Obviously, this level of high availability comes with a bit of a deployment cost. So you need to set up that logical replica. And if that's something that you are interested in, I mean, definitely come to Slack and we can help you get that going. So I guess that's pretty much it. I mean, thanks for staying with us like for over an hour. I don't know how many people have stayed, but I mean, at least now we have shared all the information. I want to highlight again that all the examples that I showed before are actually available for you to click around at this address. So you can just go to the public demo. You don't need to sign up or anything. You can just like see how the UI works before deploying it by yourself. And of course, the main thing is that like if you want to deploy it at home, we have a deployment instructions, CloudFormation templates, and so forth at this address. Like we will be sharing the link. I guess the link is already on the YouTube channel. And the main thing again is that like, of course, given that like this is the first day that we will be releasing this as open source, I'm sure that there will be some rough edges, and the best way to work around those is to come to Slack and chat with us, and like we can help you right away. And by the way, I mean, the last thing I want to just highlight, since thank to Codemate organizing this in Finland, if you happen to be in Finland and you happen to be understanding the Finnish language, there is this new magazine coming out talking about Metaflow soon, and like you can go and like buy the latest issue to learn more. Cool, thanks.
Thank you, Ville. And welcome back all speakers to the stream. We have a couple of good questions in the audience, but I think this is like sort of the start of our Q&A session as a whole. So everybody's free to answer the questions, and let's have a discussion around these. So first of all, we have Tony who asked if we know which companies are currently using Metaflow, and if we know which data they are crunching and using Metaflow for.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. Well, I mean, first, like for starters, like there's the universe of all companies using Metaflow, and given that the project is open source, we don't even know about all of them. And there are companies that are like, let's say, talking to us. I don't know if all of them want to be named, but I mean, you can see that there are companies like Zillow and 23andMe and others that are on Slack and like quite active there. So I guess those names are not secret. And the fascinating part, to me at least, is that they are like really across all industries. So we have many companies in the healthcare sector doing really bleeding edge drug design. Also, like really these real estate companies like Realtor.com, Zillow, they have been quite vocal about their Metaflow usage. CNN is using Metaflow, and then of course like many startups and like many financial institutions that tend to be more secretive about their usage.
All right. And the next question we have from the audience is that how would you describe the maturity level of this first release, and how you plan to maybe take it further to make it more mature?
Yeah, it's definitely it works. But one of the reasons we wanted to get it out in the open source community is to really identify all the use cases and perhaps even some of the edges and corners for how the back end is implemented and the sort of workflows that we could anticipate on different clouds. And so it's a good release. We felt confident that it would work, but we know it's probably not perfect for everybody. So the devil's in the detail. Please, read through the administration guide and also the instructions that Ville pointed to on GitHub. And we know that issues will surface, and we look forward to working with you all to fix them.
All right, maybe this takes us smoothly to the next question, which is like from Abo, do you offer support or onboarding or training or consultation for companies who are maybe using Metaflow for the first time and have some custom needs, for example?
Yeah, I think that's exactly a good example, like where it makes sense to reach out to Slack, and like we are obviously like providing support like as an open source community for free. and like trying to be helpful. Like if your company has like a more involved needs, I mean, then of course, like we at Outerbounds, and I'm sure at Codemate are like happy to help and like discuss like how can we be useful for you. So
yeah, that's right. The Codemate teams know the tool at this point pretty well, and we do this kind of consultation as our main business. So definitely able to look at any problems you might have and give us our expertise into your use. Let's take another question from the audience, from Pilar. Could this Metaflow UI be used to track or monitor flows in production?
I'll say definitely yes. It is being used to track and monitor flows in production at Netflix scale. I couldn't show you, but our UI at Netflix has thousands of runs. Literally, like behind the scenes, actually, it's got we've had over 1.6 million runs at Netflix of Metaflow, and the vast majority are available through the UI. And so, yes, it does work in production. And again, I think Ville and the folks at Codemate would be happy to advise on how to scale and support that kind of scale.
Mm-hmm. And maybe to add more color to that answer is that, yes, indeed, let's say you deploy something to step functions or like in the future on Argo, all those executions, all those runs will show up on the UI, and you can actually use the runs view to filter to see only the step function stuff, or you can see only the stuff that's running on AWS Batch. And then you can definitely make the distinction between the experimental runs, the production runs, like have different views. Like you can imagine that like if you have your operations team or like however like you are handling model ops, ML ops at your company, like you can have a very specific views, like how you monitor like different experiments and so forth using the UI. So that is indeed the use case that we don't want to have a separate UI for like quote unquote production and like experimentation, but that the one tool should work for all.
One tool to rule them all. But here we have another question about a little bit more specific question. Is the metadata service included in the Terraform deployment of docs?
Yeah, good question. I don't think, I don't know if you know, I don't think that it's yet in the Terraform. Actually, like Sabine might be able to answer that question on YouTube chat. I believe that like we have the CloudFormation template, and the intention is to follow up with Terraform now that we are committed to supporting Terraform side by side with CloudFormations.
All right. Feel free to send some more questions in the chat, but we start to wrap things up here. But I would like to give like sort of round of comments for each one, every one of you here to say like what's the sort of key takeaways or things you would like to sort of say to our audience what they should do next or remember about Metaflow UI and this release.
And by the way, I would definitely encourage people, if you have any quick reactions that you want to put on chat, like what you like, what you don't like, I mean, definitely, I mean, fun to see. So based on what you heard like during these presentations.
Okay, let's take just a quick question here from Sean. That is tagging supported in UI? Similarly, how to identify which item in loop failed?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think, well, I mean, the short answer is no. The long answer is that like it probably should be. So I guess that's more of the kind of a future roadmap item. But yeah, the overall, like it should be possible to tag things afterwards, and like the support for that on the command line is coming soon. Like reminding Roman here again to kind of take a look at that. But yes, eventually it should be possible in the UI as well.
And we have Savin actually commenting on this already.
Yeah, you can definitely filter tags. Yeah, that's true.
And it's actually pretty easy to identify which part failed. The timeline UI will show a failed task in red, and then you'll be able to click through and look at the logs that were reported. And then depending on the implementation, they'll likely different implementations, as Ville pointed out, will have different plugins that will allow you to link out to more focused UIs for that particular I guess compute pattern.
All right. So maybe we start with Teemu. what would be your sort of key takeaways or last thoughts for the audience?
Wow, that's kind of yeah. Summarize the last like 16 months into one sentence type
Yes,
of.
please.
Oh, that's nice. That's good. Yeah, it's been a journey. Let's put it like that. It's taken a lot of time and effort, and it's taken a lot because this was an area that I knew very little, and it was basically when you looked into it, it got more and more interesting all the time because you're creating something that needs to be highly functional and like was said, snappy, which is a really nice term and adjective for this one. And basically, when you're struggling with a huge amount of data coming in, and you still have to keep everything up and running, it takes a lot of iterations, and it's been amazing to work with Netflix and Outerbounds in this sense that they've given us the time to go back and forth and to kind of like try out all the good stuff and the bad stuff, and then figure out as a like a larger well, entity which is the best solution. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's been a to put it short, it's been a really nice exercise in teamwork on multiple levels. Yeah, that's how I
Well
wrap it
put.
up.
Well put. Okay, we have a couple of questions. Let's go to Brett and Ville next, but just bring up this question from Pilar at this point, wondering how to merge the UI with something like a more traditional logging service like Datadog and resource utilization of a specific step.
Yeah, I would have to say that that's what the plugin framework is for. I think it's something that we don't necessarily have right out of the box, of course, but it's definitely achievable through the plugin framework.
Yeah, I guess it's unfortunate that like you can't show how it works inside Netflix, but Netflix has this nice view that like you can indeed like go to a specific task, and you get to this view that like has the beautiful dashboard of the CPU usage and so forth, and that is indeed quite convenient. Now a challenge like for us like in the outside world is that there isn't, of course, a standardized way that everybody does. Some people use Datadog, other people use some Kubernetes-based tools, other people maybe use CloudWatch. So it's hard to have like a one-size-fits-all approach. Also, we are kind of reluctant to kind of reinvent that wheel and then say that, okay, so we are doing it better than like all the previous guys. So yeah, I think that the best way probably is to kind of think how we can integrate with tools like Datadog, and then either like embed those views in the UI, like kind of in those sections, like where it fits nicely, or then like have a links to those views. So, but yes, indeed, I think it's really a key question, and like how do we kind of provide those connections?
One other comment on that is it's very challenging often to discern exactly what information from those systems to present that's pertinent to the scientist view versus the sort of infrastructure operator. And so that's another challenge, and you know, so that's one of the other reasons why it's not something that's just right off the shelf because of that variance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Time for the sort of key takeaways. What do you think, Brett? What you would like to be able to remember?
I think one of the things I really think is important to remember is that this graphic user interface is just another expression of the sort of Metaflow ethos that we established several years ago, and that is where we're really focused on the user. We empathize with the user. We want them to be able to focus on the things that they are passionate about, and have a great experience as they use the product. Whether it's in the command line with our rather beautiful command line, we've gotten a lot of great feedback on the command line, and now we're looking forward to really hearing the feedback for the graphic user interface. And we really hope that people will be able to like run with it, show creative use and applications of it, and that's another reason it's in the open source world now.
Thank you. And how about you, Ville?
Yeah. Well, I guess they are like on the technical side, maybe starting with that. I mean, this is yet another one of those examples that something might look really simple on the surface, like kind of Netflix itself. I mean, you go to Netflix and you just see those images of TV shows and movies, and like, well, I mean, how hard can it be to build some UI like that? And then you realize that there are like thousands of people just making the simple thing work. I mean, I think that this Metaflow UI is yet another example that you look at it and think that, oh, well, I mean, it's kind of just a timeline. I can do that. Then like 1.5 years later. So in that sense, it's I mean, also as Teemu said, I mean, it's of course like not only like kind of putting together like some kind of a prototype, but I mean like really making sure that it really works at scale and like it is snappy and so forth. So it actually takes some serious engineering. So that has been an amazing journey. And then like to echo what Brett was saying, I think of course at the end of the day, I mean, no matter like what's the amount of effort that was put into it, I mean, the question is that like how much does it actually help data scientists, and like how much does it actually get out of their way? And indeed, the philosophy of Metaflow is that like, well, in success, I mean, people in a way, I mean, it's kind of paradoxical, but they shouldn't care about Metaflow. They shouldn't care about the UI. I mean, it just becomes a part of your day-to-day workflows, and like you just use it, and like. And like then you curse like at all those other UIs that fail and are slow, but I mean this is the one that you never have to worry about, and like hopefully like we will reach that point. So.
Great. So let me just give you a big congratulations for both Netflix Outerbounds team and Codemate team for making this happen and making it live for today for everyone out there to be to get to use the new user interface for Metaflow. We will post the links to the description of this chat. Thank you everyone for the good questions in the chat and for making the time for attending this event. I want to give a really big thank you for Brett Rose from Netflix. It was great having you here and for the great demo you were able to assemble for this meetup.
I just want to thank Codemate. You all did most of the work for everything here. The UI kind of speaks for itself, and for the folks who are online, really look forward to hearing from you and seeing how you use it, and also seeing how you can help us make it better.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, I guess, Brett, you should mention that there's a blog post coming up. So in case you want to share the good news with your friends as well, who were not able to attend this talk or presentation. So I guess that should be coming up soon, right? So.
Yes, we'll be publishing a blog post with some that goes into a little more detail in a blog format about the UI later today. And to get the link directly, just join the Slack channels that have been talked about.
Yeah, and thank you, Ville. It's been a great pleasure working with you in this project, and it I'd like to give huge kudos to supporting the Metaflow community so actively. So jump into the Slack channel of Outerbounds, which I already posted in the chat and description. And thank you, everybody, and let's have a really good day and start using Metaflow if you aren't already.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.